So, welcome everyone again, and to you, Katie. We thought we'd start, right, Katie, with an introduction, of course, of who you are and what you've done. So let me put something up on the screen. So, Katie, you're based in California. You're a California native. You graduated with honors from Stanford, so congratulations to that, and then went to study in Australia with a Fulbright scholarship master's degree in public health. And then you started to work in academia, in healthcare mainly, I think, doing your health policy research. Yep. And which is great because that started your journey around learning and connecting ideas and connecting people. But then you decided that you wanted perhaps to have a more concrete impact, and that had 15 years in the continuous improvement sphere, and especially at the Children's Hospital, where you were at some stage director of performance improvements, so led a team of improvement consultants. And it's worth noting for the European community present here, at some stage there was a redesign of the new hospital facility, right? Yes. And for 2 years you worked with designers and construction companies, applying Lean principles into design and build. So I think you're all ready to send your CV to Arup USA if you feel like it, and you'll be welcome to join. And then after that, you went on, of course, to create your own company and consult, providing consulting and coaching services and master classes. Yes. And this has overall taken you in more than 5 countries, 6 countries, in fact, if I've counted well, including the Australia and the UK in London, and Japan in 2015, 2016, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. Yeah. But for right now, you live in San Francisco, lucky you, you're married, proud mother of two sons, and I think you have a dozen chickens and 100 Dreamer dolls.
Well, more than 100 Dreamer dolls. You can see them behind me. We can show them later. It's always a fluctuating number of chickens. So I think we're around 8 at the current state. But yeah, they're actually right outside my window in the backyard here. So hopefully they won't get too noisy.
Well, no, sure
it's 8:30 in the morning here, so the ladies are getting ready for their day.
Excellent. And then last but not least, of course, you published last year in July this book that we can see, Learning to Lead and Leading to Learn, which has become a top Amazon International business success. And we're so happy again that you're here to share your knowledge and experience and talk about this book. So thank you, Katie.
Well, thank you so much, Ghislain, for inviting me here today. I really do love connecting with people around the world and having dialogue to learn from and with each other. So this is part of what lights me up, and it's a great start to my day, and hopefully it's a great part of your day, whatever part of your day you're either participating or listening in. So
yeah, so I'm sure it will be. And just to say to the people who have dialed in that we'll be exchanging, conversing around the book and your work, yes, right, until about the hour mark, and then of course there'll be questions and answers after that. So, but tell us a little bit about the genesis of this extraordinary book and adventure. How did it all start?
So, life works in serendipitous ways sometimes. You have your plan that you're going on and something unexpected happens and you have an opportunity to either seize that that new experience or not. And I really dived in as much as possible. So I had started my consulting practice in 2013 after leaving working, as you mentioned, in continuous improvement leadership roles in healthcare organizations. And out of the blue, my husband he works in tech, was offered an opportunity for our family to move to Japan. And as a lean practitioner and someone really passionate about continuous improvement and a world traveler and a global citizen, I was really excited by this opportunity. And it happened to be just a few weeks after learning about this opportunity, I was at a conference in California speaking at the Lean Coaching Summit, and Mr. Isao Yoshino was there. And I had a chance to meet him and learn from him. And he gave me his card and he said, when you move to Japan in 6 months, look me up, I'll take you to Toyota and we'll spend the day together. And I really thought that this was going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity. I felt so fortunate to have this personal invitation from this 40-year Toyota leader who was part of some really important times in Toyota's history from the 60s up until the early 2000s, and was just really instrumental in some really key parts of time. So we can go dive into that as well. Anyway, I mean, following year in April 2015, I made my husband take the day off of work. We went down to Nagoya on the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and spent the day with Mr. Yoshino. And that one day turned into one of the most profound and important adult relationships that I have developed. And really our time together was just spent in conversation and learning from and with each other. I would go down every 2 months and spend the day with him. And when we moved back to the US, I realized, I really wanted to amplify his stories and our shared learning together. He actually suggested creating a booklet, like a little pamphlet. And I was like, I think there's a lot more in here than a booklet. I didn't anticipate it would be 85,000 words and as big as it is. But over the time we spent together, really realized that his story needed to be told as an opportunity for learning about what it means to be a learner and a leader, and learning through success and failure, and also the history of the behind the scenes people element of Toyota. So that's really how it came to be, out of this unexpected relationship and partnership across countries joining together to have shared learning.
Yeah, and I think what is fantastic as well is that it's you literally have two stories in parallel. You have Yoshino-san's personal story, but it's also symbolic and representative of what Toyota means and what Toyota represents. And I guess we'll talk about it probably now. Could you say a little bit about the international dream of Yoshino-san, because that's where it all starts, in fact, his career and what he's achieved.
Yeah, for sure. And, I want to actually introduce the concept of the metaphor of warp and weft, because this is the framework on which I told the story, and yet I find it really profound as well, and harkens back to Toyota's origins of being a weaving company. So there's the warp and the weft threads. The warp threads are those solid, straight threads that are laid down on a loom that are known and constant, and they don't break, or hopefully they don't break. And if you take it as a metaphor, these are the things that are known inside of us, the things that compel us forward. And then the weft threads are the ones, the colored threads that are interwoven that create the pattern. And these are sort of the discovered threads of our lives as well. And so I told the story on this same metaphor, with the known threads, the warp threads, being Mr. Yoshino's known purpose and desire to lead an international life, to do something other than be part of just, to expand his horizons and be connected to greater people. And that manifested as a young boy, as a dream to move to the United States. And you have to remember the historical context here too. He was born just before the end of World War II. So as a young boy, this would have been just after the end of World War II, and the United States and Japan were obviously fighting against each other. But he had an experience with a young American soldier that really, he was so nice and so tall and so other than what he'd experienced. He thought, I want to be part of this, something different. And so it helped him through. He invested in his childhood of learning English. He then learned Spanish. He chose Toyota in part because he could see it had potential for international expansion. And he waited patiently, through multiple job steps in his career, and ultimately 20 years later had the chance to move to the United States. He really is an international person, which was uncommon for that time as well. So it really speaks to his tenacity and his vision.
Yeah, it's really a lesson of patience and resilience all the way, as you say, between 15 to 20 years before his dream of moving to the United States and working over there and learning the culture was realized. So then you organize your book around, the two pillars, right, which is learning to lead and then leading to learn, right? So with some lessons for the first part and then some case studies. So you can imagine if we were to cover 40 years of Yoshino-san's career, we would need a bit more than 20 minutes. But let's talk a little bit about really a striking anecdote around also the lean concept of focusing on the process and not the people, which is when he's a young, basically a newcomer in the Toyota world, and there's something happens in a paint shop.
Yes. So the first part of the book is around his first 10 years at Toyota. So a new college graduate coming in to really learning to lead. And this anecdote that I'll share here now actually came, how I told it in the book is very close to how he told it to me. He hadn't thought of it in years and was actually laughing he was sort of incredulous in remembering that this actually happened because it's so different than maybe it would happen in most other companies. So he was a young college graduate, had joined Toyota and was in his orientation period, which at Toyota, and he was going to work in the back office. So he was not going to be, he wasn't an engineer. He wasn't going to be interacting with the actual car manufacturing, but Toyota thought it was important for all of their employees to understand the value creation work. So they went out for almost 3 months to do frontline work. And so he was assigned to the paint shop for one of his rotations. And so his assignment there was to pour, a can of paint and a can of solvent together into a big vat that then, and this was 1966, so it would then get sprayed onto the cars as they came down the line. And he was doing this for, a few weeks. And one day, someone from the shop floor ran into the paint shop and said, the paint's not sticking to the cars. And all eyes turned to him, and he thought, uh-oh, obviously I did something wrong. And instead of yelling at him or blaming him, which might have been their first immediate human reaction, the managers came over to him and asked him to explain what the process was that he took to mix the paint and solvent. And it became clear that he had picked up, in that instance, one of the wrong cans, and it wasn't the right mixture. But they saw that the cans were so almost indistinguishable, so they were not very clearly labeled, and it was very easy to make a mistake. But not only, and he couldn't believe this actually in remembering the story, not only did they not blame him, they thanked him for making the mistake. They thanked him because it made it visible that they had not created the conditions for someone new to the job to be successful at it, because they had all been working there for a long time, and so it was obvious to them. And so it made it visible to them that they, as managers, had responsibility to create a better working environment. And it is just such a powerful and amazing story about the responsibility that we have as leaders and as managers to create conditions for people to be successful and to take the responsibility for that as well.
Yeah, so it highlights also an absolute key principle in the Toyota way and the Toyota production system, which is you have to let the problems come up and surface, right? Because then you can work on them and find a solution to them, and normally collectively. So then moving on, and Yoshino-san progresses in his career and continues to learn. And at some stage, there's a pivotal moment a bit later when he's really still learning, but also leading, when he's going to be in charge of the changing the culture program for NUMI. So very quickly, NUMI is a key moment in the development of Toyota. Is when the Toyota became international, and they wanted to install a production line and plant in the US in a very challenging environment. So what happened?
So this was a joint venture between, it wasn't just Toyota coming in and starting up their own production. They actually chose to partner with General Motors, who is not performing very well and is one of their worst performing plants. It's actually a stone's throw away from me here. It's actually now the Tesla plant. And so they were taking these American frontline managers who had worked in a really adversarial environment for years, and the plant had been shut down. And Mr. Yoshino was charged with developing the training program that would be the beginning foundation of them to change their ways as managers and to sort of take on the Toyota way of managing and leading. And Mr. Yoshino was a bit overwhelmed by this. He thought, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to change the culture? And he realized that he himself couldn't change the culture. What his responsibility was as the manager of this training program was to create opportunities that allowed them to see a different way of being and to support them to change themselves. And so they created, and this is where he first met John Shook, who is the author of the foreword of the book. And John John's done a tremendous amount with amplifying the lean thinking globally. John was the very first non-Japanese employee of Toyota in Toyota Motor Corporation. There were some people at Toyota Motor Sales, but actually working in the manufacturing sector. And so John, and who was reporting to Mr. Yoshino, and a small group of other Japanese managers came up with this program that sort of emulated this training, this orientation program, where they'd have a few days of classroom training, and then they were put on the front line and partnered with a Japanese, like their counterpart, who would be teaching them. And they didn't speak the same language. They actually didn't speak any words of the same language. But working together and seeing a different way was really that foundation of that culture change. And what's really important too is that Toyota realized that just like a few week training program, that's great. You can have some aha moments. But if you don't have the follow-up and coaching and support to really embed that when you're back in your new environment, it may not last. And so when those frontline managers went back to the NUMI plant in California, their counterpart, who was their training partner in Japan, would come out to California for 2 or 3 months to work alongside of them to continue to do that in the new environment. And within 1 year, that plant went from GM's worst performing plant to the top. And it was, there's so many case studies written about it. It's really transformative. And Mr. Yoshino learned so much about what it means to develop people there, and our responsibility. We can't really set out to change culture, but we can set out to help individuals see change and then collectively create that culture together.
So yeah, indeed it's a landmark, in fact, in the deployment of Lean at International. This story with the NUMI plant in California, but that's not the end of the story, because 4 years after having been in the US himself, and we'll keep it a little bit as a secret because you have to go and read that story. Yeah. But Yoshino-san comes back to Japan, and then he implements in a small Nagoya office compared to the headquarters of Toyota something quite incredible, which is the Change Yourself program.
Yes, and this is amazing. So he finally realized his dream, and as you said, he came out to California and had a chance to continue to talk with those people he had trained. And then when he moved back to Japan, he also realized, I actually want to continue to be in the US. But he was given a short assignment in this small department, and he did some really incredible things. I really encourage, it's amazing. This sort of was an afterthought that he told me about. And it's so profound. It was only a 10-month assignment that he had, but he saw that the people working in this department, it was more of an HR group, hadn't really had much opportunity to experience much of the world, or even experience much of Japan beyond. They were living mainly in the countryside and coming in every day to the big city to work. And he wanted to give them an opportunity to learn and develop themselves and see other cultures, including going out to, maybe go to Osaka or go to Tokyo. And he developed this training, this sort of learning experience where he would teach some mini workshops, he would give them some experiences. And the most amazing part was he wanted to give some of them an opportunity to go overseas. And so he didn't know how he was going to pay for it. So he decided he was just going to, because of the relationships he built through his previous roles, he was going to go just ask the airlines if they would donate tickets. And they did. He caught, I think it was 14 pairs of tickets for his employees to go travel, around trip tickets to go to Germany or to go to the UK or go somewhere else. And it was transformative for so many of those people. And it was just like all the things he did to uplift them. And it wasn't just that, he was really trying to show them a different way of being as well.
Yeah, it's really a case of going above and beyond, in fact, what is expected in terms of developing your team. But if we were to summarize Toyota's secret, because you asked Yoshino-san the question many, many times, and I think the fact that you exchanged with him for so many years in preparing this book, at some stage, I think there was some kind of a revelation that he shared,
Yeah, so, when we first started conversing in 2015, I was really curious, like, what's the secret to Toyota? Like, everyone's trying to discover this, so many companies and organizations and individuals around the world are trying to do what Toyota does, not necessarily for cars, but, the culture and the continuous improvement mindset. He'd say, there's no secret, there's no secret. And one day, and it was early in our conversations, he said, well, maybe the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. And he said, we don't even notice and we take it for granted. And I really think that that is so profound and true. If you think about everything they do is connected about a deep attitude towards learning and how to make problems visible so that we can learn how to solve them, how to create structures that challenge our thinking. So how do we set challenging goals, because it's by what we learn from not reaching our goals where we learn and accelerate even more. You know, and all the production principles, even some of the ones with creating a pull system, it's challenging us to think, how can we do it better? It's all about an attitude towards learning and improvement, and not just continuous improvement, breakthrough improvement as well, innovation and creativity, and really transformative thinking as well.
Yeah, so and that is very important, because the image that we tend to have about lean and Toyota production system is very methodological, you know, and Lean Six Sigma also is very statistical. But in fact, the foundation is about creating a permanently learning organization. And that's at all the levels of the organization, from the graduate to the CEO of Toyota. It's still true today.
Yes. Yeah.
But Katie, moving on, because we could, again, spend a long time on the lifetime of Yoshino-san, but I shared with you that what is important for Arup, Arup is, in fact, the sustainability advisor to COP26, which is going to happen in about 40 days in the UK, in Scotland. So we have a purpose and an intention, which is to shape a better world. But what would be your recommendations to us as a leadership coach in terms of shaping ourselves to be better leaders, better managers, in order for us to shape a better world?
Oh, I mean, that's a hard question to answer in just a very short period of time. And I harken back to the framework of leadership that I talk about now, which is what I call the Leading to Learn framework. And the genesis of this was from that very first time that I heard Mr. Yoshino speak at that conference. He was actually on stage with John Shook, and he was talking about his role as a leader. And a comment that he made struck me, that the essential three elements of leadership is, how do you set direction? So have clarity of where we need to go, what's the challenge we need to overcome, which clearly you've already articulated that. What are the targets? And then how do we provide support to people to develop themselves, to, you know, that go back to the paint story, to do the right thing, to learn, all of those things about how do we help others move forward to achieve those goals? And then how do we develop ourselves? So if we can set direction, provide support, and develop ourselves more effectively, we are going to be able to achieve those challenging goals and to achieve the vision and be people-centered and help create learning for the organization, for the people we work with, and for ourselves. And then, you know, always looking at ourselves and the opportunities to leverage our strengths, but really also to continuously get a little bit better every day as well.
Yeah, that is so true. There's also a few key concepts that those that have been to Japan, like you, and are familiar with continuous improvement culture of Japan. There's a few concepts that are very important. There's one which is hansei,
yes,
which is reflection. There's intention. There's shiku, and there's gambate. Can you develop a little bit on this, and maybe tell us about the Daruma dolls also in the background?
Yeah, well, let me get one here for you, because it connects to intention as well. So the first, let's talk about the concept of hansei, which is the Japanese word for reflection or self-reflection. And actually, the working title of the book was Practicing Hansei, because this was a story about looking back and reflecting and learning more through the process of reflection. And we can, in Japan, and Toyota in particular, they're very effective at having a habit of reflection built in to their processes. And like, leaders do this more naturally. The process of Hoshin Kanri, or strategy deployment, has clear set times where leaders and managers come together to reflect. And reflection is really where that wisdom happens and learning happens. And if we think about that, you know, the cycle of plan, do, study, adjust, we often get stuck in plan, do, plan, do, plan, do, and don't focus on that study. And the study is really that reflection part, and where the learning happens, and we miss out on that. And so if we can find even micro moments to be more effective at Hansei, at reflection, of studying and learning, we'll be better at then making those adjustments and continuously improving. So that is a really important concept. And I think, or not just I think, I've experienced for myself, and I've experienced with all the leadership teams that I work with around the world, there's a sense of like we're under so much pressure that we don't have time to slow down to think. So we're very reactive in all that we do. And we may be throwing the dart and hitting the bullseye, but we're not doing it with purpose and intention and with a hypothesis of, if we do this, we expect this to happen. So maybe we hit the mark by luck, but we're not necessarily thinking and learning and then being able to recreate that process or improve upon it. So reflection is so, so, so important. And if you can, excuse me, bring that into your practice, even on micro moments, you will accelerate your own learning and the learning around you. The second word that's connected is intention, is one that's very important to me, and it's connected to this concept of leadership too. So I'll talk about the Daruma doll as well. This one was made for me. It's my biggest. It was made at a temple in Takasaki outside of Tokyo, about an hour and a bit on the train. And I actually take people there on my Japan study trips when we're able to go to Japan. And this is the word for intention as it's written in kanji symbols. And this element here represents the word heart, and this one represents direction. And I find that this word intention can help us orient to what's important inside of us, what's our purpose, who do we want to be, and then how do we align our actions for how we need to show up to be that person. And so we're going so fast that maybe we have a sense of that we want to be a leader who, is good at setting direction and providing support, but the actions that we take may not be in alignment for that. So how can we take these micro pauses and be more connected with intention? And then these Daruma dolls are about the concept of perseverance, and I am so obsessed with them. I don't know if you can see, they're kind of hidden. I have many, many, many of all different sizes, shapes, colors, and designs, and I became obsessed with them when I lived in Japan. And these are paper mache dolls, mostly made in that town of Takasaki. And this is what and they are weighted at the bottom. This one's actually quite heavy, but even the little one. So I can't do it on my hand very well, but it's like a weeble wobble, and it will always right itself up. So when you have a goal or an intention, you fill in the doll's left eye, and then it represents the Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8. So even if you fall down, if you have a stumble, a setback, a challenge, get yourself back up and continue forward, and you eventually will be able to achieve your goal. And so then you can fill in the doll's right eye as well. So I love that that representation. And then there's this thing, ganbate, which means go for it, do your best. And I love that. They say that like at sporting events, or if you're going into taking an exam, but it's about doing your best and continuing to get up and persevering. And even if you didn't achieve your goal, ganbate, go for it, do your best.
I love that the Daruma doll concept, right? So we're gonna need to find one and put the black eye and.
Yes, here it up. Well, I have many, but yes, I have the ones with the black eyes too. Some I have completed goals and some are waiting, especially from my Japan trips that were all canceled for last year. They're waiting patiently for when global travel opens up again.
Well, Katie, unfortunately, I think we're at the end of our half hour of conversation. And you mentioned Japan. I think it would be good to maybe share a little bit about your projects and the things that you have in mind. I'm sure you have many.
It's good, and I invite everyone to reach out to me to learn more as well. It's one of the things that I did this year was to develop a program called the Leading to Learn Accelerator, which it's taking the book and the coaching principles and practices that I have and marrying them together in a 10-week program. And I've run it a few times this year, once to an open enrollment, and I've been doing it with some corporate clients too. And it's about taking the stories from the book, marrying it with tangible principles and practices through my teachings in group cohorts of group coaching sessions that are happening live, and really helping accelerate the participants' leadership through intentional practice and learning and community. And so I'm really, really thrilled to be offering my second cohort to an open enrollment as well. And I'm really thrilled with the group that's already shaping up, and I would love to have any of you join me as well. And I have a special discount code to share with you that's good through tomorrow midnight California time, so wherever you are. So please take advantage of that. And if you have any questions, reach out. There's so many more details on my website, which is kbjanderson/accelerator. So come accelerate your intentional leadership with me, and have an opportunity also to talk with Mr. Yoshino in 2 live sessions as well.
Yeah, which promises to be fantastic. So yeah, and I'll be putting that code you mentioned, and thank you for arranging that as well, in the chat just afterwards. But
oh yeah, and then also there's a link there too if you want to learn some practices for intentional practice. I have a free guide about how to get out of your telling habit, so some ways to ask more effective questions to help support learning in your organization. So that link was on the slide as well.
Brilliant. Well, again, Katie, thank you so much for being with us, for having shared a little bit. There is so much more in the book, and that is why, you know, I reached out to you, because I thought it was really at the intersection of so many things: personal development, again, the Toyota story, the lean story linked to Toyota. And but I guess we're going to stop here the conversation and open for questions and your answers. So please feel free. Don't be shy. See, Katie's not shy. So
no, I love talking with people. So please bring forward any questions or comments that you have.
Yes, Stephanie. Hello.
Hi, Katie. It was really interesting, and it's not just what you say; it's how you talk. Your enthusiasm and your energy is just great.
Oh.
And I just want to ask you. I mean, just like I said about Arup and we shape a better world, and you've talked about this lovely idea, practice of continuous learning across, you know, top to bottom. I mean, how actually to go about doing that if that's not deeply part of the culture? We talk about it, we talk frequently about lessons learned, and then quite often we'll just repeat what we did last time. How to actually do this?
I know. So I mean, that's, I think, the crux of, you know, the big challenge. So we, you know, have to work collectively to do this, but we all as in leaders, or you know, if you're working on a team, you have some sphere of influence there. So how do you even start asking questions that prompt deeper thinking and reflection, that make problems visible? So, you know, that go deeper. So sometimes when we do reflection in the West, we think of like plus delta, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, what might we do differently next time? And we move on and don't do anything with it. Hansei actually goes deeper than this, and we explore this in the Accelerator too, about how do we think more deeply, and how do we uncover thinking and assumptions, and then how do we get better at bringing those assumptions forward in our next iteration, so that we're thinking more proactively, and doing that on those cycles. And really, I think even any of us showing up, starting to ask some more provocative, more effective questions can help spark thinking. And so we can lead through influence that way. And then over time, that starts to create a ripple effect in the organization as well. So it's not like a quick fix, but if we can all start asking some more questions and think a little more deeply, that collectively is going to create an impact and a change. Yeah.
And you mentioned that, in fact, in your book at some stage, Katie. That's the fact that you work with questions and ask questions instead of saying what you need to do or what you want to do. Sometimes is much more effective than setting the thing and asking the person to do whatever you want.
And I have go get that guide I have. It's many pages, and I give some tips on how to start doing that, and some types of questions to ask and some questions to avoid as well. So yeah, KBJ Anderson / telling habit. Yeah.
Any other questions that you can put in the chat if you're too shy, or rather write it? I have a question for you, in fact, Katie. Oh, there is a question.
Yeah.
Olivier?
Hi there, Katie. Thank you very much for your talk. Really, really informative. I have a question regarding those maybe underneath the level of leadership at the moment, because at the moment I'm early careers.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, what would your advice be to people like maybe my stage of the career to build these levels of leadership without actually being in a role, maybe to use those skills?
Yeah, so, I think we all have the capacity to have impact and lead people, even if it's leading through influence or leading through being a part of a team, leading thinking. And when you read the book, you'll see that many of the things Mr. Yoshino did are in his early stage of his career as well. So again, how do you ask better questions to help your team think more deeply? That's something you can do no matter what level you're at. How do you create an environment where people feel okay if they've made a mistake? And, so the things that you can do, or how to, like, if there's not a clear target or direction that your managers or leaders have set out, how do you have the courage to ask some questions to gain some clarity that we don't actually know where we should be going? And by doing that, you not only demonstrate your leadership, you also help create that culture that you want to be seeing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just keep on and know that we all have an impact in the people we interact with, so we all can lead through influence, even if it's not our title or role. Yeah. Thanks.
I think we have another Kate.
Okay.
Kate.
Hi, Kate. Sorry, multitasking at the moment. I just want to say, thank you so much. It's really inspiring in terms of what you were saying. And I was just reflecting there as you were saying, may take a moment to reflect. And I was thinking, I'm probably very guilty of seeing the opportunities, what the issues are. And, as a sort of mid-grade management role I have, I go into action, problem solve mode. And it's almost like, you can see the answer, you just say, we just need to be doing this, and off you go, set two, somebody just take ownership and make it happen. But it's literally that sort of 80-20 rule. It's kind of, you fixed it, but you haven't fixed it because people haven't learnt through asking the question themselves, and what's the consequence of not solving the problem, but the problem is actually people aren't realising the problem. So I think it's that kind of step back, and I think personally I'm going to try and hold my tongue, think through kind of what's the question I should be asking, not what's the solution I'm proposing in this internally. So I think that's really
to me, that is like, this has been my journey as well. So one thing that's been really helpful for me, and I advocate others to, and you may find it helpful too, is to take what I call an intention pause. So even if you're like going into an interaction with someone on your team, or going from Zoom to Zoom, just connect with what's my purpose and how do I want to show up in this meeting, and then what am I going to do to align with that purpose? Like, yes, we want to get to the outcome, but I also want to help this person think how to get there and to have some ownership of the problem solving. So I'm going to ask more questions. And so just remind yourself and ground yourself with that micro intention pause can be really helpful to stay in that moment and get out of that sort of reactive space that we're just like moving so fast. So like reconnect with that purpose, and it can help.
Absolutely. That's a personal culture change. I'll try. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Helps with kids too. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to just give you the answer. Sometimes I do, but
Exactly. That is learning this as well. Home life as well is good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Thank you, Kate. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Another question regarding, from your point of view, what's the best leadership decision that you've ever made or that you've seen someone make?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. I don't know if it's the best.
Or the most inspiring, maybe.
I have to pause to think on that. It's not like I have that one on the top. So I'll have to ruminate on that. But I think for me, one of the most inspiring leaders that I worked for, maybe it wasn't a specific decision, but it was a way he showed up. It was the last healthcare organization that I was had an internal role for, and he really embodied these lean concepts, and he led the way for the organizational change by showing how important it was to go see and to ask those questions. What's the target that you're trying to achieve? What's actually happening? And how are you thinking about closing the gap? So, and also setting obviously clear direction and strategy that he was working on. He went out to see, and he was the COO, and he was asking those questions. He was going out, and that accelerated the culture change. He didn't stay in his office, obviously, you know, so really going out and doing that. So we all can do that. How do we go out, go connect with people? And as I talk about in the book, going to see is not just to be checking on the status of the work, but it's showing that you care about people. So obviously we're in a different world here virtually, but you can still go see, and however you can, go connect with people, find out what's actually happening, and ask them questions about how they are thinking about solving the problems they have ownership for. And then providing support if, you know, if they need it and they're floundering or they need barriers removed. And to me, that was incredible leadership, and it really changed the course of how this large hospital healthcare system was running.
Yeah, it's literally going to the Gemba, as the Japanese say, but to show that you care for what the people are doing and have an interest in what they do.
Yes, so it's checking on process and checking on people and developing thinking. Yeah.
Katie, I think we've reached the end of our time together, unfortunately. Again, I mean, we can reach you on kvjanderson.com for questions. I really deeply recommend, I'm sure you understood by now, to read the book. There's a wealth of anecdotes, of occasions to reflect for yourself or for your activities. And
I also have a companion workbook that's available digitally on my website. So if you're going to start reading the book and want to really dive in more, get the workbook, or of course, please join me on the Accelerator program. It starts in middle of October, and it's going to be me, and I promise to help lift you up too.
And you've also released recently an electronic version of learning to lead and leading to learn, right?
Yep, there's the audiobook and the ebook as well. So
yeah.
many different formats to meet your needs. And I love, please reach out and connect on LinkedIn. You know, obviously get the coaching guide and reach out. I love to connect, and I would love to work with some of you in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great rest of to you in California, and end of day for us in the UK.
Thank you so much for inviting me here and for your comments here today. I hope you all have a great day wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Mm-hmm.